been such a privilege to sit up here in front and watch the reunion of my family. We are here to celebrate the life of Mac Smith, who has been a backyard neighbor of ours for the last 13 years. I have a whole file full of material that he has prepared and gleaned from the best of the writings of the world. And I've appreciated how his daughter Lori has kept that file filled. And I hope she's going to pick up the challenge of keeping it alive in the world. Mac was a very wide thinker, and his son Scott also has written a book on economics that I think everyone should read. It is a challenge to understand what the future could be, but both Mac and Scott probably are disappointed in the sense that people have not picked up the message. It's very difficult. The world is not like it was back in the time of Jonah when he went and preached on a street corner and the whole of Nineveh changed overnight. It doesn't happen that way. But Max was very concerned that the world had changed and was concerned that it needs to change very soon. Eastridge has been our home for 13 years now, longer than that for Mac and his family. It is our church at times, but we all have another church. Well, not all of us, but some of us have another church. My church has been Cornerstone United Methodist Church. And we share our allegiance to that church, and I certainly welcome all of the members of that church who are present here today, because you'll remember that Max and family and friends regularly attended. And you could always tell when they came in because they came in as a group representing Eastridge. We like to represent ourselves here today and hope that you find strength and comfort from the things that are said here today. It is my great honor to introduce the pastor of our church, Dr. Paul Cook, who is going to present the message after the hymn that we're going to sing. Now, these hymns are hymns that were favorites because of their content. They may not be known to all people. You can't claim that they're Methodist hymns particularly. And I've become aware in serving churches in Wisconsin that the hymnody of various churches, even they're all Methodist churches, is not the same. I put in the bulletin at first hymns that I thought were common to everybody's understanding, and they just weren't. But we will do very well with them, I am sure. So let us sing, "Here I Am, Lord."
I Thanks for that. Well done, everyone. Like Art North said, my name is Paul Cook. I'm the pastor at Cornerstone Church. It's really been a pleasure for me to know Mac and Jackie Smith. It's been a pleasure to have several of our East Ridge residents as part of our church, and we welcome them and all of you anytime. And it's especially a pleasure for me to be here this afternoon with you all, and I thank you for the opportunity. I've been trying to think, what could I say about Mac Smith that someone else won't also say? Someone today will surely mention his deep, lifelong passion for the environment, particularly the critical role that we play as both beneficiaries and stewards of the earth. I'll leave it to others to describe the immense kindness that Mac had for others, including his openness to people of all kinds. I can certainly speak to Mac's generosity and love, especially to me and my family. Speaking on behalf of my young children, not a lot of our older members of our congregation engage young children in conversation. But Mac and Jackie do. Mac loved kids. In fact, my kids would tell you that one of their favorite restaurants in Cutler Bay is the dining room at East Ridge. Cutler Bay's best kept secret. By the way, incidentally, I'll mention this afternoon, my son, he's 9 years old, he actually asked, he said, "Can I go with you today?" And I've never had that happen, where my children asked to come with me to a funeral or memorial service. This is the first time. He wanted to be here. He's actually got a nasty cough, though, so we left him at home. What can I say about Mac that others might not? My mind kept going to one of his passions, butterflies. As it turns out, though, I noticed there's a whole bunch of them on the sidewalk on the way. There's one on the piano, there's one right here. So I think I missed the mark, actually. Someone else will probably say something about butterflies. Even on the day that he passed, Mac had several cocoons incubating on the back porch, safe from birds and other predators. Naturally, I thought, what does the Bible say about butterflies? Well, as it turns out, actually nothing. As far as I can tell, the Bible says a lot about nature, the environment, and numerous animals, but never actually specifically mentions butterflies. But the Bible does use a related term. You may know that the New Testament was originally written in Greek. You might not know much Greek, but there is a Greek word that the New Testament uses that will be familiar to many of you. That Greek word is metamorphao, from which we get our English term metamorphosis. The word means to change or transform, a complete, total transformation. It's easy to see why we use that word to describe the radical process that takes place to transform a caterpillar into a butterfly. After stuffing itself full of food, it anchors itself, and the magic begins. The caterpillar's skin literally splits open to form the cocoon. And for several days, it looks like nothing's happening. But looks can be deceiving. Because finally, what emerges from that cocoon looks nothing like the caterpillar it used to be. In the Apostle Paul's second letter to Christians living in the ancient city of Corinth, he says, "All of us are looking with unveiled faces at the glory of the Lord, as if we were looking in a mirror. We are being transformed," that's the word there, "into that same image from one degree of glory to the next degree of glory." This comes from the Lord, who is the Spirit. The Apostle Paul asserts that we are being literally metamorphosed in such a way so that if we were looking in a mirror, we would actually see the glory of the Lord. God's deepest desire is to change us in such a way that the face of God becomes more clearly evident in our own lives. Changing does not always come easy for us, does it? The older we get, the more change becomes a reality, whether we welcome it or not. Our bodies change. They don't work like they used to. Our circumstances and lifestyle change with time. Our relationships change, and we lose good friends. Many times change is something that happens to us. We are simply passive recipients, maybe even unwillingly. But we can also see the need for some change in ourselves. We do not always act the way that we ought. We don't always talk the way that we should. Our thoughts and attitudes often have room for improvement, even if we think no one else knows them. And God can still bring about change in each one of us. And we can even be willing participants in that. And that's what metamorphosis is all about. So today and in the days to come, we will take some time to reflect on Mac's life. We will remember how he has touched and influenced each one of us. We will be inspired by his example and undoubtedly seek to replicate some of that in our own lives. In the coming days, whenever you see a butterfly flitting about, I passed several zebra longwings on my way in. My prayer is that God will remind you once again of Mac's passion for butterflies and for all of life, and his loving influence on those who came in contact with him. But I also pray that God will remind you about metamorphosis, about God's desire to transform our lives into something different and beautiful. In that moment, may we hear the voice of God calling us toward the life that God has in store for us. Amen. I want to invite you to sing with us once again, Surely the Presence of the Lord. The words are here, several pages in now. Let's sing together.
Hello, can you hear me? Loud enough? Well, before I get started, I want to apologize for being out of uniform. I'm the only one with a coat. But of quite a large group. I see a number of you from Eastridge that I know. And I ended up being asked by Jackie to do this, and we left off the sweater bit, Jackie. I thought, but it's over there. That's for you, Scott. Okay. And a couple of weeks before Mac died, or a month maybe, I got to thinking about the fact that I had known Mac for 75 years. 75. And those of you good at math can go back and say that was 1943. Well, 1943, a few things were happening, weren't they? World War II was on. Mac and I both graduated from high school. I was a hillbilly up in Tennessee, Knoxville, Tennessee. Mac lived here in Miami. And, oops, he came to the University of Tennessee because his father had graduated from the University of Tennessee. And he and I joined the same fraternity. And we both loved to swim. We'd both been on our high school swimming teams. So we got to know each other pretty well from the swimming team. And I hope you'll forgive me if I sort of pause some. I'm not using any notes, but in June of 1943, we know that if you didn't join a service, you were going to be drafted. And Mac volunteered to be in the Army, and I volunteered to be in the Navy. And we started the summer semester. University of Tennessee. UT, by the way, is Tennessee, not Texas, in case some of you heard about it. And come the spring of 44, he was called the Army, I was called the Navy. So we parted sometime early 1944. But fast forward to 1953. 9 years later, I'm getting out of the Navy for the second time as the Korean War ended. And I had married a couple of years before, my wife Bev and I. My wife passed away in November. She had Alzheimer's, but we spent 2 years in Newport, Rhode Island, which is a wonderful place, a good, very good Navy duty. And when we were getting out, I thought, where am I going to go? What are we going to do? And we both decided we wanted to go to Miami. We didn't like cold weather. And we came here in 53, and that's 53, how many years? 65 years ago. That is quite a while. How do I get a job? Well, I said, I don't know anybody in Miami except Mac Smith. I wonder if I can reach him on the phone. Well, back then you could dial 411 and it wasn't too hard to get Mac Smith. And found Mac was married. He and Jackie were living in South Miami. And when I told him I needed an appointment with his father, who was the president of Florida Power and Light, if I could get an appointment with him, he could introduce me to somebody in an office where I possibly could get a job. And that's what happened. He said, sure, I'll be glad to get you an appointment with my dad. But in the meantime, if you come down, you can stay in the apartment with Jackie and me. And we did that. Everything fell into place. I got my job. We came to Miami and we bought a house in Pinecrest. We paid $16,900 on an acre and a quarter of land. So here we are. The Smiths soon moved about a mile away south of us, and the next few years we ended up with growing up kids and a few other things. The next big event in their life was the fact that Mac was to be the head guy in the Airstream Trip Around the World. And some of you may have seen the book. I think they probably are still selling it, right? Jackie still has some copies. But kids grew up, everything moving along pretty fast, because I don't want to be up here longer than the preacher was. Have any of you noticed that on TV they speak faster than we used to talk? At least for me, I have a hard time catching up with what they're saying. Well, I'm speaking slowly, I know. But we get up to around 2000, and Mac and Jackie invited my wife and me to come over and have dinner with them. And it was in the wintertime. We came over, and we had, were you still in 411? Were you always in 4? And there in the cottage 411. And we had a nice dinner, but I didn't see Eastridge because it was dark. So that was my first visit to Eastridge, and so we go forward a few more years. My wife was diagnosed with dementia come 2006. And come 2009, we went to the U of M Med School, where the head neurologist, actually had an MRI and said, yes, and I believe she has Alzheimer's. So that was 2009. By 2011, she's still driving. She's still playing tennis on our ladies' tennis team and so forth. But things are beginning, you know, I'm doing the laundry and I'm beginning to do the meals. And so I didn't realize just how bad it was getting, but our 3 sons, I've told each one of them, they're now my dad. I'm the son. Because they came and told me, we should get you all moved into Eastridge. So we ended up selling our house. We came to Eastridge, and I said, wow, look at this place. It's a park. It's nothing but beautiful landscaping. It's a park. And so we came in 2012. And see a few here. Interesting, I see Jack Drago. He'd come just a few months before we came, and found out he was a graduate of the Naval Academy, just like me. So we have 2 graduates of the Naval Academy here at Eastridge. But when we got here, Jackie and Mac were very helpful in getting us accustomed. And I don't know how to put this, but Jackie insisted. If you know Jackie, you know what that means. She insisted that we join the chorus. And so Bev and I love to sing. And so we came to the chorus and had a wonderful time until a few things happened. My wife had gallbladder surgery, came back to health care here, and 2 weeks after we got back, she had been unable to walk because of being in the hospital in a bed for over 2 weeks. And so I got a call a couple of weeks after she got back, and they said, Mr. Moore, your wife has just gotten up to go to the bathroom at 4:30 and she fell and broke her hip. Back to the hospital. And then we get back, health care, and as most of you who were here at that time know, we moved in the end of 2015 into the 3 Palms, beautiful buildings, and we were very blessed. Spent the next few years where my routine was to go pick her up 11 o'clock, come out, sit by the next building over here on the Lifestyle Center where we sang hymns. Now with Alzheimer's, she couldn't tell you whether she just had lunch, but she could sing those hymns. Many of you used to see us sitting out there, and we had a wonderful time. That was what got me through that period. And then she passed away. And before she passed away, I see with Jackie and Mac, I think, you know, you all have been married 66 years too. We were married 66 years, and so were the Smiths. And then moving up a little bit into this year, I started thinking about the 75 years that I'd known Mac, and ended up where when he passed away, I said, well, he's the oldest person other than my sister, who's, I think, is still alive after knowing him for 75 years. But here we are, and I wanted to mention one other thing that Pastor Cook mentioned, generosity. Well, both of them were generous and kind and loving to other people, reaching out to other people. 2 or 3 Christmases ago, here comes Mac over to my apartment with a big orange sweater with a big T on it. University of Tennessee swimming team. Back then I didn't have enough money to buy one, so he had one, and he said, I want you to have this. I said, no, your son or somebody might want that leather sweater. And Jackie insisted, you keep the sweater. So I've had the sweater since then, but it's now going over to Scott after it's over in the Lifestyle Center waiting for him. Anyhow, that brings us really up to date. I thank the Lord that I've known the Smiths. Thank the Lord for the whole family. And I express my sympathy, our sympathy really for my wife and me. I thank the Lord that I know where she is. She knows Jesus as her Savior. She knew him, and unfortunately I don't know what to do with it, but we have a big picture of my wife, myself, and our 3 sons, this big, in front of the sofa where I look at my TV, and I get to see her many times a day, and waiting to be there myself. But anyhow, thank you all for letting me speak, and God bless you.
Hello everybody, my name is Carlos Gonzalez, and I've been asked to speak about Mac and his work at Miami-Dade College. I am a college professor there, and I've worked with the college for, it's going to be 26 years starting this year. This is my greatest honor at the college to speak on behalf of Mac and his work. I've won many awards at school, but this is the top. I am so privileged to be here with you and to share a little bit about Mac from my vantage point and from my work at school. I'm going to read a little bit from Mac's book, Now That You Know. It's the introduction. This is a story about how the universe uses grandchildren to overcome the roadblocks that we adults often put in their way. The path we will follow stretches backward in time at least 15 billion years. This is also a story about grandparents who, inspired by grandchildren, become pathfinders. Those who, as Thoreau suggested, hear a different drummer. Pathfinders are often like fish out of water, aware that they are living in a world that doesn't make sense. It is a world out of touch with reality. Mac was a pathfinder. Children on earth today are like fish out of water. At some level, children know that what they're being trained to do with their lives is meaningless. But the drummer of the universe is like another heartbeat within us, and the persistent rhythm will not allow us to rest. It is as if a tide stirs deep within the cells of our bodies, gently pulling us in different direction from the one that has been foisted upon us. The reason more of us do not turn and go where we are being called is that we feel imprisoned. Einstein was fond of this analogy, referring to our imprisonment as an optical delusion of consciousness. We have been deceived, he said, into assuming that we can experience ourselves, our feelings, and our thoughts as separate from the universe. We are often urged to cultivate our separateness. We make it the basis of our education. We make our individuality our religion. But Einstein also knew that we can and we must free ourselves from the burden of such shackles. We must widen our circle of compassion. We must embrace all living creation. We must affirm the whole of nature in its beauty. I was hired at Miami-Dade a year after Mac retired. And so here I am to talk about Mac's work, which kind of tells you something about what he did. So I didn't have an experience of Mac as my colleague at work. I experienced Mac as the ripple effect of his life in my life as a teacher, and then ultimately as a person. 4 years after I was hired, I had the privilege of coming in contact with a group of people who were at that time in charge of the Environmental Ethics Institute. We had just started. Norma Watkins and Tim were there, along with other people, Joyce, many that are here today. And that gathering was my first sort of contact with Mac. Over time, I actually met Mac like maybe 2 years after that. And I immediately realized that this man was different, and that he carried within himself something that was so powerful. Part of what he knew was that this whole idea of being human is that to be human is to be embedded in the universe, that the human is not separate from the universe. And although that sounds theoretical, Mac lived it and kept on coming back to it over and over and over again. As my experience in the Environmental Ethics Institute developed, I started to learn about Mac's work with Life Lab, which he started in the early 70s at Miami-Dade College, which was this program that allowed adults and young people to basically use their life experience and turn it into academic credit. It was innovative, revolutionary, and so far ahead of its time that even now, after 25 years at the college, I still can't wrap my head around how he did it. But that wasn't the only thing he did. And so Mac also was about hands, and his hands were very peculiar. He was very expressive, the way he spoke, and he had this large hands that were just like, they would weave things, you know, in your mind as you would watch him. And so he, as that program actually took off, he also developed over time the Environmental Demonstration Center, which was this place in the Kendall campus, which is this little oasis, which is still there. But he created this space, this building, to show people how we could live in South Florida. I remember coming to the Environmental Center not as a professor, but as a young person, because it was built around 1978, 79. I was still like 14 or 15 years old. So I was part of the community. I remember going there and being mesmerized. No idea, well, like, who made this, like, what came out of this. And over time, it was such an amazing expression of love. That demonstration center was damaged by the Hurricane Andrew, and it was dropped. One of the things that I learned from Mac over and over again was that he never attached to anything. He created Life Lab and he dropped it. He created the Environmental Demonstration Center. The storm damaged it. There was a lot of sort of turmoil in the college at the time. And instead of fighting and like going after it and trying to hold on to something that had already like moved on, he just dropped it. And he dropped it with such grace. And he was off to the next thing, which was the Environmental Ethics Institute, which eventually became the Earth Ethics Institute. That institute has been the force behind my teaching at the college. It has changed every aspect of everything that I do in terms of the way I teach. Mac inspired me in so many different ways. Thousands of students have been impacted by Mac's life, even though they don't know his name. As we speak right now, there are 10 Miami-Dade College students that have just left Strawbell Lodge in Tennessee. And they had a week-long experience in Narrow Ridge. That's Mac's gift to these students. Mac has gifted thousands and thousands and thousands of young people through the work of a community of loving people who have held this container through the Institute, the Earth Ethics Institute, but mostly through our hearts. So, somebody asked me if I saw Mac as a father figure. And I thought about that. I have actually thought about that before. My dad passed away when I was 18, so I saw Mac and about, a little bit older than my dad. But I answered the person. I didn't see Mac as a father figure. I saw Mac as my brother. And that's the magic that I think he carried. That Mac invited every single person into this connection that was not hierarchical. And that showed you through his passion for living life with integrity that you can do the same thing. He gave people permission to live that life. He not only gave them permission, but he gave them encouragement. My kids, over time, we ended up in Lake Junaluska, in one of the little cabins that Mac and Jackie had there. My kids' lives were different because of you, your family, because of Mac. My family is different because of Mac. I see the world differently because of Mac. Miami-Dade College is different because of Mac. There's a mention of Jonah and of the future and of the challenge that we are all faced. I think Mac points us in the direction of how we have to do the change. The change is through the story. The writer Barry Lopez said, sometimes we need a story more than food to stay alive. Sometimes we need a story more than food to stay alive. Mac pointed to the story of connectedness, of this entire universe of relations. And he moved in that direction. And every time I think about what he did and how he lived and his impact in my school, I'm inspired. And I know that his work is going to persist. It's going to endure because it's not institutionalized. It's actually been placed inside the heart of thousands and thousands of people. And we are witnesses of that.
He always has played the song, and now we play what is Unca Pacha Un. The great day we come from the brothers and sisters here and all in Mexico and all in the universe. Okay. We come together, and when that day comes, we can look up to Creator, and we can look to the Mother Earth, and we say, Father, Mother, we are finally together. Entonces, Mac, take us up there and give these people here to the heart. And all of us have to play this song. Okay, so you can do your feet, put your hands, you can stand up and you can stand.
You can stand. If you want to sit, sit. If you want to move around, move.
And sometimes in the middle of the song goes like this, we stop, and then we look up, where, then, and two.
admit when I came to Eastridge, I was a little uptight. I was uptight about joining for the first time a residential community with a lot of old folks. So I was very right to finding a character. And I found a character in Mac. Now I know here at Eastridge we have characters, but no doubt Mac is at the top of my list of characters. I remember the first time that I met Mac. This gangly figure came at me with a great big smile, arm outstretched, and a hand in a firm handshake. But what I remember most was his riveting eyes on mine. They were telling me, "You're an individual, I want to meet you and know about you." That meant a lot to me, and it says a lot about Mac and how he lives. Now another attribute of Mac, I believe he is the ping pong champ of Eastridge. I played him a few times, I never won. I'm pretty sure he's the champ, although he talked about how good Marla was, so I hope Marla is not here and gets me in trouble about that. Shaving bottle brush. I didn't know what that meant, but I did learn, of course, that Mac loved the nature and he knew a lot about this property. And there's one tree down here that has shaving brush. And these beautiful flowers around April fall down from the trees onto the ground. And they look like just hundreds of porcupine quills colored fuchsia. What I didn't know was that Mac was making squares of about 4 or 5 inches, driving a nail and putting this beautiful flower down and delivering them without knocking on the door of ladies here at Eastridge. Well, last April, Mac was not able to do that. So I picked up that legacy from him. So Mac was a very special person to me, and I think to Eastridge. I would like, if you could, now the other thing about Mac is, and myself, we both, I think, were on the edge of a little frivolity that could have gotten us in trouble. Mac loved music. No doubt he loved dancing. And I have a feeling that the dances that he joined us in the Dominic's thing in assisted living, and the birthday night, at times his family might have been concerned about whether he was going to stand up because of the agitation of the dance. So I want you to do something for me in conclusion. I think we all know that Mac is in a better place. Picture, if you can, that we are there with him. We see from a distance his figure. Kind of looks like Archibald Crane. And as we get closer, he is walking toward a group of strangers. And he wants to meet them. And he has that same smile, and the arm outstretched, and the hand. And we can tell by their expressions, he has created new friends that he's so good at doing. Now then we notice that he does have that characteristic pent-up energy, because we see the right hand flailing, and in it is a ping pong paddle. So he's on his way to look for a ping pong match. And lastly, we notice that he hears some music. Not any kind of music, because his pace quickens. He thinks this is dancing music. And he picks up the pace so fast we can't keep up with him. And that's the way I want to remember Mac, the joy of life.
Sister to tell me what I'm supposed to do. On the sheet it says remembrance of his family, and I've been nominated. I'm Ron Cordes. I'm Shaggy Smith's 6-year younger brother. My entire life I have lived in the shadow of Jackie Cordes. Somewhere along the line, McGregor Smith appeared, which took a lot of pressure off of me because she became Jackie Smith. And that's what everybody remembers her as. But Jackie Cordes was my older sister. And that was a tough gig because I followed her 6 years behind at Carl Gables Elementary. I followed her 6 years behind at Ponce de Leon High School. And it was always, oh, you're Jackie Cordes' brother. I hope you're as nice and as good a student as she was. What kind of pressure does that put on a young man? I got to know Mac when he first started calling at the house. I guess I was like 14 then. And it was interesting when it was announced that Jackie Cordes was getting married, there was absolutely no question about who she was going to marry. Even though there had been numerous young men who had come by the house that I observed through the years, some of them driving distances from Georgia, some of them coming from all around who were courting my sister. But there was never any doubt, never any question about who she would marry, Mac Smith. Now, I can get emotional, I'm sorry, but he wasn't a brother-in-law. He became an instant brother. I don't know what it was. I got to play at their wedding, the piano, marvelously as I was at the time as a pianist. But when McGregor would come over to the house sometimes to court Jackie, I would sit down at the piano and play Because. A very romantic song at the time, Because. Well, Jackie and Mac called my bluff on that. They said, fine, you're going to play that at our wedding. And really, my piano playing was very poor. But that's what they did to me to get me started off. So there was a 6-year gap in our lives. It was interesting because she married at age 24, I married at age 24. She started having children right away, so did I. Our children sort of interlocked. Scott and Lad are older, but then all of a sudden came my Chris and my Cheryl, and then came along Judy, and we all interlocked. So our families have become as one as we've gone through the years. And we've come to appreciate the Smith family and their unbounding energy. Unbounding energy. I mean, to take off in your early 30s and go around the world in an Airstream trailer, leave us here to pay the bills. Actually, my wife became Jackie's secretary while she was gone. My wife paid all the bills. My wife took care of all that while they were gone. Lori, who you all know here from seeing her around, was this big and slept in a bathtub on that Airstream trailer. That was her bed. So our families were intertwined through the years, but there's one trait that all of the speakers today have alluded to that I've been thinking about describing McGregor. McGregor never stopped learning. Never stopped learning. He was always a font of knowledge, always into something. Never stopped learning. And never used the word I or me. Anytime you were around him, my kids will testify that to come here or to come to their house on 60th, 62nd Avenue was an adventure. We're going to go to Uncle Mac and Aunt Jackie's house. And Uncle Mac didn't have them inside playing board games or anything like that. He had them outside. I mean, they were out collecting bugs. They were out. We never knew when they came home from Uncle Mac and Aunt Jackie's what they were going to bring with them, my kids. They'd be a little grimy, a little dirty. They may have a few bugs on them, but they'd been out with Uncle Mac. He never stopped learning. Never stopped learning. He did not know the word I. It was always about you. One man who said when he came up to Mac, he looked you in the eyes, and he could care less about telling you anything. He wanted to learn from you. Everything. Anything. Anytime you met him any place, that was it. He was constantly talking about you. That's the way I remember him. He was my brother. My sister and I married at the same age. Unfortunately, we both lost our spouses. Same. A week apart.
Have to stop crying. I'll go around and got us all crying here, so I appreciate that. So, Dad's dad played the harmonica. That's who I learned from. Dad learned how to play harmonica, and grandfather didn't like giving speeches. At least that's what he claimed. And so he'd always open meetings with the harmonica. And so I heard him since probably I was in the womb, is what I guess. So, and he always gave us harmonicas as gifts. He gave them out when they were, I think, 25 and 50 cents a piece. He always had harmonicas, gave them out to everybody. So I'm going to play one of the songs my grandfather played quite frequently. Love Makes the World Go Round. And hopefully you'll recognize it, but I thought I'd give you a warning as to what the song is. That shows you that it's not a good song. But anyway, so this was played, I think through the 1800s into the 1900s and now into the 2000s is what I thought. And so love is the key to all life, and if we all embrace that, the world will be different. So I feel that's kind of the core of my dad's understanding and how he lived his life and how he passed it on to everyone in the room. So that's why I picked this song, part of it. So hopefully I'll get it going. I'm going to play it through twice, but twice, that's it. So
I'll see if I can do this. As has been mentioned, my father, we learned a lot from. And it's often thought that as people get older, they become the children, and then the children have to take care of them. And so in that, you'd think that maybe there's not much to learn anymore. That wasn't the case. One of the hardest things for us to deal with is, why is there suffering? Why is there suffering in this world? A lot of people turn away from the concept of God because they see the suffering. Most of you know of Billy Graham and his crusades and his teaching. What you may not know is that Billy Graham had a partner early in his life, and everybody thought that man would be the greater preacher. But he turned away from God because of the suffering that he saw. Billy Graham and he were over in Africa, and he saw the young kids dying of starvation, and finally he thought, how can there be a God with these children suffering? But what I learned that's really profound was in my father's last few weeks. He suffered. So those of you know Mac, it's like, why should he suffer? Does he deserve it? The answer is none of us deserve suffering. But as my father suffered, and it became unbearable for him, it was hard for his children, for his wife. And I found myself praying, please don't let him suffer. Why should he suffer? It's just not fair. And I prayed about it a lot. And then a few days before he died, he got peaceful. And as I prayed, instead of praying, please don't let it happen, I prayed, why? I learned that a couple of times in my life, is to ask why. Because usually it seems if you ask God to do something, often he doesn't do it because there's a reason. Or he might, may not answer you then, but when you pray, ask why, then he'll answer you. And so I was praying, and like, why did he have to go through this? Because now he's peaceful, and I could hear God speak in my heart, and he said, what's happened to you in the last couple of months? What's happened between your sisters and you, and your mother and you? Have you not grown? I said, oh yeah, we grew a lot. We grew closer. I have an amazing family. Can't believe my sisters, my mother, and uncle, all of us are so lucky. And I realized we'd grown closer. And then God spoke again in my heart, and he said, what father wouldn't give anything, any amount of suffering, so that his children might grow? I know I do it for my kids. So it's love, and it's growing closer together that matters. When one of us dies, we are all brought closer together. And it is true, there's no I in this world, or me. It's just us. So, I hope we've all grown closer together because of my dad. Thank you.